motorway. And a particular hotspot was the area just north of Gort, which is where I'm going to concentrate on. But since the Four Seasons Bat Survey, the N18 road scheme was merged with two other schemes, the M17 Galway to Tuam motorway and the N17 Tuam bypass. So this actually formulated a 61-kilometre motorway route going from Gort all the way to north of Tuam. And the road was constructed over a number of years and it was eventually opened in September 2017. So just going to a wee bit about the area north of Gort. For those who are not from Ireland, I have a wee map of Ireland there, and the red circle shows the area that I'm highlighting in this discovery map here. So the motorway, if you just follow my cursor, the first motorway was literally here. So this is Gort running north towards Oranmore and towards Tuam. So as you can see, there's an awful lot of lesser horseshoe bat roosts in vicinity of this area north of Gort. And the principal thing is that the motorway was literally going to be this physical barrier between east and west of the actual motorway. So this was one of the main concerns, and which is the reason why that two of the mitigation measures I'm going to talk about today were actually put in place. So one of the concerns was here, this green dot here is Kiltartan Cave, and this is an SAC and a known hibernation site for lesser horseshoe bats. And this is, as you can see, located east of the actual motorway. And then west of the actual motorway is Garryland Nature Reserve and Cool Park Complex, which is found to be the main foraging area for lesser horseshoe bats in the general area of that we're highlighting here. So as a consequence, it was felt that the motorway was literally going to potentially split the lesser horseshoe bats roosting in Kiltartan Cave from one of the principal commuting foraging areas of Cool Park and Garryland Nature Reserve. So one of the things was looking at possibly providing them a green bridge to actually traverse safely across the actual motorway. But also in consideration was that the population, lesser horseshoe bat population west of the motorway, while there was actually lots of known hibernation sites, we didn't find a principal maternity site. So the concerns was that if the motorway proved to be a barrier, that the lesser horseshoe maternity roosts known east of the actual motorway, such as Torballylee, would be cut off from the actual west and the foraging areas to the west of the motorway. So we also need to provide a roosting site, a maternity roosting site for potentially the west of the motorway population, lesser horseshoe bat population. And this is the other mitigation measure I'm going to talk about, Garryland Lodge. Let's just give you a wee background to that. So Garryland Lodge, this was a derelict building that was located in Garryland Nature Reserve. So Garryland Nature Reserve, woodland, part of the Cool Park complex. It's a 1.5-story existing stone structure, and it was known as an actual maternity roost, but going far as back as 1975 when it had an intact roof. But since then it went into disrepair and became a derelict building. But at the same time, it was a potential point of providing a purpose-built renovated structure for lesser horseshoe bats. So this site was chosen because it was located in Garryland Nature Reserve, and Scopia 2008 showed that lesser horseshoe bats tend to forage within woodlands and scrub within 2.5 kilometres of the roost. So finding a structure in the middle of Garryland Nature Reserve, an absolute perfect habitat for lesser horseshoe bats, was a good point to start with. And since it was a previously known roosting site, we knew that the bats knew it. Now in 2001, the NPWS, the National Parks and Wildlife Service, did put a corrugated roof in half of the actual structure. So it was being used by a handful of bats in the intervening years since the actual roof collapsed. But also Cool Park and Garryland Nature Reserve are within 2.5 kilometres of Kiltartan Cave, a known SAC hibernation site. So as part of the mitigation measures, it is proposed to Galway County Council that the renovation of this structure would be a good mitigation measure to undertake. So 2011, the actual renovation works were started, and this was the works were initially proposed to be a long-term stable roosting site for lesser horseshoe bats, but potentially other bat species as well. So this is the structure as it is now. So lots of consultation was undertaken with the Vincent Wildlife Trust, who have a vast amount of knowledge with regards to Lesser Hershey renovation, and in consultation with NPWS. So plans are put together. These are put to Galway County Council, and as a result, we got a natural slate roof. The whole structure was stabilised. Lots of repointing of the stonework, and internally, a lot of renovation work was done so that the loft space was literally turned into 2 loft rooms, suitable as maternity structure for the actual Lesser Hershey bats. But we're also conscious that this is an opportunity to provide all roosting requirements for the bats, so all year round roosting. So one of the downstairs rooms were turned into an insulated cold room. And then there was a transition room that provided access from the loft space into the transition room directly into the cold room. Externally, all of the entrance points, windows, doorways were all sealed up apart from one entrance point to allow bats to actually access directly into the loft space. So this work was undertaken in the winter of 2011. Was finished by the end of February, but then we noticed there's a bit of damp issues going on inside. So extra vents were put in April 2011. So works were finished on the 21st of April in 2011. So just go into a wee bit about the actual building itself. So you can see here, this is the one entrance point. It's a grilled entrance point following VWT guidelines. It has lead sheeting around the windowsill and the lower part of the entrance point to make it pine marten proof so that they can't climb in and munch on my bats. The upper part is the 2 loft rooms for the attic space, and then the transition room with a loft entrance point to allow the bats to travel from the loft down into the transition room into the cold room area that is insulated to try and keep the temperature down suitable for hibernating bats. So as part of the monitoring, I've been undertaking monthly counts since April 2011, and this literally just counts of adult bats in the attic, cold room and transition room. We did note if there was young present, and we also noted if the bats were active or torpor. And since 2011, I've undertaken over 130 counts to date, and we've just had our paper accepted in the Irish Naturalist Journal for data from 2011 to 2018, so look out for that. So as I said, 130 counts, over 130 counts to date. So I'm just going to go into a little bit about those results. So this is all the data up to the end of 2019. So, so as I mentioned, the works are finished on the 21st of April 2011. So I'm just going to highlight a couple of dates. So the first date I'm going to talk about is this red number 2. And this is from the 26th of April in 2011. That's when I went back for my first monthly count after the works were finished. And we already had 2 Lesser Hershey bats visiting. So it was great to see that, yeah, they were checking the building out and potentially a good place for the bats to roost. So the black bars are my 2011. So you can see there have 4 bats roosting in, not consistently at every monthly count, but in that first calendar year, we had the highest number of bats was 36 Lesser Hershey bats roosting in July of 2011. And then going on to my next highlighted date, this is my yellow number 1. And this is when we got our first hibernating Lesser Hershey bat in November of 2011. So it's great to see yes, the cold room was working. It was proven to be a successful place for hibernating bats. And going on to my next highlighted date is blue number 90. And this is literally, we had 90 adult bats roosted in the attic space on the 23rd of June in 2013. But what was noteworthy is this is the first time we actually noted juvenile bats. So here we had evidence that the space was now being used as a maternity roost for Lesser Hershey bats. So that's within a couple of years of the renovation works. And then in our green 87 here, this was in January 2016, and this is the highest number of hibernating bats we had. 70 of the 87 was actually roosting in the cold room, with the remaining 17 dispersed between transition and the attic space. So this is wonderful. We now had a substantial number of Lesser Hershey bats using the actual structure, the cold room particularly, as a hibernating site. Now, I must actually mention that this particular year, this particular winter in 2016, did coincide with a flood event in north of Gort. And a lot of the known caves and mine shafts that were used by lesser Hershey bats were flooded. But the main thing was that we know that in the event of potentially preferred hibernation sites, the bats are quite happy to actually use the cold room in the actual renovated building in Garryland Lodge as a hibernating site. And then come to my final data I'm highlighting here. This is my orange 210, and this was on the 3rd of August in 2019. And this is the highest number of adult bats we've gotten in the actual attic space during our monthly count. So 210 adult bats using it. And it's considered that the actual bat population, lesser Hershey bat population of this whole Gort area is approximately 400 individuals. So it shows that we approximately are providing a maternity roosting site for 50% of the actual lesser Hershey bat population of north of Gort. So it's shown that that the renovation works have proved to be highly successful. But in discussion, like the success of Garryland Lodge as a roost can be accurate with the fact that we already knew it was being used by lesser Hershey bats. It's located in prime foraging habitat. There was a lot of consultation, a lot of discussion with BWT and NPWS to make sure that the works that were done to the best of ability to try and provide what we knew lesser Hershey bats needed. And the renovation works were completed in such a manner to provide all year round roosting requirements for the bats. Like since 2013, bats have been using Garryland Lodge at every monthly count. So they are using it all year round. And that's what we were trying to aim for, and that's what we achieved. But that achievement was based on all of these factors. And it's very important that when we're actually looking to do bat mitigation measures, that they are properly thought out and properly tailored to the species that we're trying to cater for. Now going on to the actual green bridge. So this green bridge on this motorway is the first green bridge built in Ireland. As a consequence, it is a dual purpose overpass. And it's a flagship. So as a result, it is this dual purpose. So it is an agricultural road to allow landowners with land either side of the green bridge to access, or either side of the motorway to access the land. But it is being designed to provide wildlife movement, particularly designed for lesser Hershey movement. So the reason why the green bridge was put here, and the reason why we have a green bridge for lesser Hershey bats is lesser Hershey bats have a very unusual echolocation call. So they have a very high pitch echolocation call of about 110, 113 kilohertz. But due to the actual way to actually produce this call, it's quite a narrow beam. And as a consequence, lesser Hershey bats are known to hug the linear landscape features that they commute along. And as a consequence, they prefer to be within a highly structured landscape to actually safely commute between their roosting sites to their foraging areas. So when they come to an open point and are forced to actually travel across an open area, they will drop as close to the open ground to actually traverse safely to the next connecting linear point that they can travel along. So the likes of a roadway, when a lesser Hershey bat meets an open roadway, it will drop to the surface of the road and traverse across it. And as a consequence, traveling across a motorway, there's likely collisions with vehicles. So the whole idea behind the green bridge was to provide a safe overpass, a safe means of actually allowing the lesser Hershey bats to travel across the motorway safely without potential vehicle collision. So as part of the work done for this road scheme, Bob Sebbings came over to Ireland in 2014 and did radio tracking. And it was particularly with individuals in Kiltartan Cave. So this yellow circle here is Kiltartan Cave. So 7 individuals from Kiltartan Cave were radio tracked. And it was shown that the individuals were emerging from the cave, following along this hedgerow here, meeting this river. This is the Hammerhead River. You see it's quite a small stretch. It's only about a 500 meter of river, because literally it sinks underground on either side of the actual length of the river that you can visibly see in flood condition here at the moment. Because this whole area is a karstic limestone. It is riddled with underground chambers. Indeed, Catharton Cave is a 1 kilometre length cave with 500 metres accessible by humans. The rest of it is by diving, and after that it goes into a series of small interconnecting tunnels underground. So highly karstic landscape area. But this Hammerhead River is very important foraging commuting area for the lesser Hershey bats. And travelled across here, meeting the hedgerows and travelling across towards Cool Park here and the flooded Turlock around here. So we've shown that at this point, this is where the bats are travelling through the landscape. And as a consequence, with the future road motorway, this was the point that they're potentially travelling across the actual motorway. And this is where the Green Bridge was to be located. So one of the things about it was also, it's no point in just putting the bridge there. We also had to actually ensure that there was landscaping, tree lines and hedgerows to actually bring the bats to traverse up the Green Bridge, across it and down the other side and head over into Cool Park. So literally all along these areas here, there was hedgerows planted, and then there's a hedgerow across the top of the actual Green Bridge. Now, unfortunately, like with so many road schemes, landscaping tends to be the last mitigation measure that's put in place. So when this road scheme was opened in 2017, it was a newly planted hedgerow. So it was just little whips across this grass bank. So it doesn't actually, it looks quite bare. This is like in the spring of 2018, as you can see, it doesn't look like more than just grassland areas, but it has grown since. But we've been monitoring it since 2018. Unfortunately, we didn't get any monitoring done in 2020 due to the year that it is, but we do hope to repeat monitoring it in 2021. So we did a number of different things, but the main bat survey element that worked for us was the static surveillance. So we had 2 static units on the actual Green Bridge itself, A and B, with the microphones directly into the center of the actual roadway of the actual Green Bridge. So if lesser Hershey bats were recorded on the microphones, we knew that they were actually, because of this narrow beam of echolocation call, we knew that they were actually traversing across the actual Green Bridge. And then we split the actual area to north of the Green Bridge and south of the Green Bridge, and had 2 separate survey periods where we had statics located at different points along the actual boundary of the motorway. And these tend to be located at stone walls or hedgerow junctions onto the actual hedgerows that are actually planted as part of the landscaping. So just to give you some of the results from 2019, as I said, it's ongoing, and we hope to have a much bigger picture of this at the end of next year. So the first one was, this is the June 2019, and this is in relation to the statics located north of the Green Bridge. So the 2 units on the Green Bridge, and then the units located north of the Green Bridge. And then this one is south of the Green Bridge, 2 units again on the Green Bridge, and then the units located south of the Green Bridge. So the actual bars literally have the number of bat passes recorded on the actual units during a 5-night surveillance period. So as you can see, the units on the actual Green Bridge recorded a much higher level of lesser Hershey bat activity, which show that the actual Green Bridge is providing a traversing point for lesser Hershey bats across the motorway. We are still getting a little bit of activity on the statics, both north and south of the Green Bridge. This is 2019. We did have a bit of a drought prior to this, so the actual growth of the landscape features wasn't as dense as we hoped it is. But after 2020, I was down there in September, and a much denser growth in the actual hedgerow on the Green Bridge and adjacent to the Green Bridge. So hopefully 2021 would show that this activity level is reducing, and we're getting increased numbers of the bats using the actual Green Bridge. But it's good to see that we are having higher levels of bat activity, lesser Hershey bat activity on the Green Bridge itself. So discussion, we are showing that the lesser Hershey bats are using it as a cross point, but there is still potential movement of lesser Hershey bats adjacent to the motorway, and as a result, potentially across it. We have to look into this more, ensuring that any gaps in the planted landscape is planted in, that we're getting good dense growth to encourage the bats to follow these linear features to the actual Green Bridge and as well as across it. But as I said, monitoring in 2021 will hopefully show this. Now onto the terrestrial mammal usage. Like a bridge, a physical overpass like this, it's also got potential usage for terrestrial mammals, and as a result, a bonus if we do have terrestrial mammals using it. So we set up a trail camera monitoring in 2018 and 2019. I only got to do September 2020 this year because of COVID-19 restrictions, but we hope to repeat it all again in 2021. So there were 4 trail cameras put on the actual green bridge, 2 on the dome of it, and 2 either side on the tracks leading up to the actual green bridge. And these are the settings here. We once triggered, it took 3 photographs, and then there was a 1-minute delay between trigger events. So we started off that in May 2018, we'd have 5 nights of or 5 days of monitoring, but then realized we might as well leave the actual units out for as long as possible, and so that we get a much longer period of time, and they were quite safe being attached to the actual green bridge itself. So overall, we got 7 mammals recorded on the trail cameras. The 7th one is small mammals. We didn't identify them down to species level, but the majority of the recordings look like field mice. But in relation to the other 6, we had Irish hare, fox, badger, otter, rabbit, and red squirrel. It was particularly interesting that we were getting otter, and the actual activity showed that they were potentially coming from the Hammerhead River, crossing over it at dusk over towards the Torlock in Cool Park, and then coming back over at dawn back to the direction of the Hammerhead River. So it's really interesting to get otter. And while I haven't got the 2020 results here, we did get otter again in September 2020. In relation to the red squirrel, we only got this in 2018. There was none in 2019, but again, we did pick it up in September 2020. Now, so we have the number of sightings for each of the different mammals, and then what the number of days in the actual survey period that these sightings were recorded. So the highest number of sightings in 2018 was fox. We had 67 sightings on 28 of the 29 days of monitoring in September 2018. In 2019, we had a very high level of hares around traversing across the Green Bridge in May 2019, 147 sightings over all 24 days of that month. In relation to badger, we had 36 sightings on 16 of the 20 days of monitoring in July, and 35 sightings on 19 of 20 days in September. So it was great to see that it was definitely being used by 6 mammals, and 7 being the small mammals. So in a sense, I wanted to see were the bats actually crossing. There was one thing about getting trigger events on the actual trail cameras, but were they actually moving across the actual Green Bridge? Because when we looked at the rabbit was being continuously recorded on this trail camera here, but we weren't getting them on these trail cameras. And there was an awful lot of rabbit activity in this area, but they weren't actually crossing the bridge. They were just feeding in this area and triggering the actual train camera. So we basically decided that a trigger event to indicate a wildlife crossings were the same animal, and we kind of like time-stamped this. The same animal was actually recorded on at least 2 of the cameras, or were recorded on the 2 cameras on the dome of the actual Green Bridge to indicate that there was wildlife crossings. So in 2018, we had 2 wildlife crossings per day, while in September we had up to 3.7 wildlife crossings per day in 2018. This increased in May 2019 with 7.3 wildlife crossings in May 2019, but this is primarily due to the very high activity of hares crossing over the Green Bridge. But again, 2.9 wildlife crossings in September of 2019. So it did indicate that the bats were using the Green Bridge, going from one side to the other side, which is very important result for us. Now, there was also a concrete pipe located south of the Green Bridge. This was a dry, never flooded, and as a result, it was heavily used by badgers. And you can see two chaps poking out here, and another individual. Indeed, we had 1 female adult and 3 of our cubs using it this year. So it was great to show that the badgers, and it's only badgers we ever got using the actual concrete pipe, but they're nicely using that, moving between Kiltartan side over to Cool Park. Now, one of the things about this particular green bridge, it is the first green bridge, so it is a flagship, and there is a lot of improvement, to be honest. If you ever visit this green bridge, it's heavily fenced. The tracks leading up to the green bridge are fenced on either side. And yes, we need fencing on the motorway side to prevent any mammals going onto the motorway. That's the whole purpose. But the green bridge itself is supposed to connect to the wider landscape and allow freedom of movement of mammals into the wider landscape. And there's a lot of fencing. Even this is the fencing on the track of the actual green bridge, and over here is actually Cool Park. So for animals to get to Cool Park, they actually have to get through 2 sets of fencing. So in the sense of going forward, green bridges should actually have greater connectivity to the landscape to allow the mammals not to be funneled along agricultural tracks up the actual green bridge and across it, but that they have freedom to actually to move through the landscape, such as this photograph shown here in the top right hand corner. But there's lots of improvement, but it's great that we have this baseline. Now in discussion, the green bridge was used by 7 terrestrial mammals, which is great. It's encouraging particularly to see badger and foxes using it, because these are one of the most visible road collision species on Irish roads, particularly foxes, which tend to avoid concrete pipes, such as the underpass shown here, but prefer overpasses. So the usage of the fox on the green bridge is a very positive outcome. Now, unfortunately, because this trail camera is triggered by numerous movement, we did record quite a high level of human activity, particularly because it is a very useful point to actually get to Cool Park for walkers. So during the day, we get an awful lot of walkers using the bridge, walking their dogs, so forth. But at night time, we also got a lot of high level usage of domestic animals walking themselves and using the green bridge to actually travel between Kiltartan and Cool Park. And particularly one particular Jack Russell that seemed to go for a walk at 11 p.m. every night. And we actually also recorded him hunting rabbits and hare on the green bridge, and I actually captured him catching one. So there's a lot of usage of the green bridge apart from wildlife usage, and this may be negatively impacting on potential wildlife usage. And so going forward, future green bridges should be designed solely for wildlife usage with minimum access by humans. So overall, in conclusion, Garryland Lodge has provided maternity, hibernation, night and traditional roost for lesser Hershey bats. We've also recorded brown long-eared bats, Dovbetons naturalis, using it in small numbers. And we have a maternity roost of soprano pipistrelles also roosting behind the lead sheeting and just in the stonework at the access points. So we've gotten lots of bats using the actual house at this stage. But the main thing is proved to be very successful for lesser Hershey bats. The green bridge is providing access for terrestrial mammals across the M17, which is wonderful. There is lesser Hershey usage, but we do need to carry on more monitoring to determine its success for lesser Hershey bats. But for green bridges in the future, do need to be considered as sole wildlife passage with limited human access and greater connectivity to the landscape. So that's the end of my talk, but I'd like to thank MPWS and VWT for all their help. The monitoring Garryland Lodge and the Green Bridge is funded by Galway County Council and facilitated by Tobin's Consulting Engineers. So Garryland Lodge is located in MPWS property, so it's great to see that its long-term stability is within the actual nature reserve. Thank you.
Thanks a million, Tina. That was really, really interesting. Thank you very much. And I can see that there's questions coming in already, so that's brilliant. If you, I don't know if you want to stop sharing your screen.
Okay, I will indeed.
Yeah. And I can put some of these to you. So Lucy Fay has asked, so she said the numbers of hibernating bats seems consistently low and perhaps even declining in recent years, whereas summer numbers are increasing. Do you have any idea of any winter numbers, of why winter numbers might be so low, declining?
Okay, well, because of the karstic limestone area of Gort, there is a phenomenal amount of suitable hibernation sites in this area. So there is a large number of hibernation sites that are monitored by NPWS, and obviously the lesser horseshoe bats do prefer those, and as a consequence, they will prefer to go to their in a sense their older sites that they're happy to use from year to year. But the main thing is that when those sites were actually flooded in the 2016 flood event, such as there's two particular hibernation sites were flooded, the bats from there are likely came to Garryland Lodge, and when in need, Garryland Lodge is providing suitable hibernation sites. So that's the main point to take from that. In relation to the increasing numbers of summer sites, we didn't know where exactly the bats were in this part of Gort were roosting in for the summer months, but obviously the numbers are increasing because the maternity site in Garryland is highly suitable, and bats from other sites are moving to Garryland Lodge and making this their traditional site. So that's very, very encouraging. I wouldn't be concerned about the numbers fluctuating in the winter. The main thing is when needed, this is important, and this will be used by the local hibernating bats.
Very good. So she also asked, how did you overcome issues with background traffic noise and static detectors? Presumably those alongside the road would have picked up a lot of traffic noise which could have drowned out bat calls.
That's an interesting question. Where the actual detectors were located, there's quite a wide grassland verge between the actual where the road traffic would be and to where the actual statics were located on the fence line. So in a sense, because of the narrow beam of the echolocation calls from lesser horseshoe bats, if they're near the actual microphone, they're going to be picked up, and it's still quite far away from the actual traffic. So we didn't have, that wasn't an issue for us there wasn't that much traffic noise picked up, to be honest.
Okay. Catherine Kelleher, I don't know, you might have actually touched on this a bit in the end of your talk. Is there mammal-proof fencing installed in association with the Green Bridge at motorway level?
There is, yes.
Yeah.
All the boundary of the motorway is mammal-proof fencing. So like, okay. Yeah, that is quite extensive. So there isn't movement of mammals onto the motorway itself.
Okay. And Lynn Whitfield has asked, was there any interim mitigation while the bridge was under construction?
Sorry, say that again, please.
Was there any interim mitigation while the bridge was under construction?
There wasn't, no.
Okay.
Not in relation to Green Bridge, no.
Just to see here, so I think it was Susie Coyle, is it, or Coyles is the name here, has asked, what was the level of survey effort for radio tagging, and do you have any advice for anyone planning on undertaking radio tagging survey for LHS bats?
Yes, this is a difficult one because lesser horseshoe bats are not the easiest bats to tag for radio tagging. I wasn't involved in the 2004 radio tagging. It was only 7 individuals from Kiltartan Cave, so it was quite a low effort in comparison. There was quite a lot of work done in relation to radio tagging on the current Galway bypass, so it was a much bigger program there. I haven't radio tagged lesser horseshoe bats myself. I've only done radio tagging for brown and ear bats, so I'm not going to be able to advise properly on that, sorry.
No, that's okay. Thank you. And Andrew has asked, which other bat species were found to use the Green Bridge other than lesser horseshoe bats? Okay,
well, we got every other bat species that is known to the area was recorded on the actual static units. But the thing is, all the other bat species, because like we did do dusk surveys, and you can see the soprano pipistrelles, common pipistrelles, and Leisler's bats traversing high across the actual motorways, while they were kind of, in a sense, using the Green Bridge as a point to cross over. They were traversing about 5 meters up to 20-25 meters of the Leisler's across the actual motorway. So in a sense, we wouldn't consider them using the actual Green Bridge. Now, we did get Natura's bats and brown and-eared bat on the actual statics on the Green Bridge, but we also got them on the other static units as well. So there is a potential that they are crossing the motorway at different points also. But the main thing, especially with the recordings on the statics south of the Green Bridge, that landscape is quite open. There's only stone walls meeting the actual landscaping features. So in a sense, that needs to actually, the growth of those landscape features need to be much denser to encourage the bats to traverse north up to the Green Bridge. So that's where there is still, in a sense, a porosity in the actual landscape at those points. We do need to get up, but all bats were recorded. But I can only say with definitive knowledge on the actual statics that lesser horseshoe bats were directly using the Green Bridge as a point of crossing over.
We got a question from Betty Wilson asking, if you weren't going to use a Green Bridge, would you have considered bat hopovers at this location?
It's quite an open landscape. I don't think it would work, especially not for lesser horseshoe bats. I think a physical structure, solid structure with a green element is required for lesser horseshoe bats.
Okay. Katie Pollard has asked, I was just wondered how many dead mammals, not bats, you found on the road near the bridge in relation to mammals crossing using the bridge?
We didn't notice any mammals directly in the area that we were surveying. I know that NRA or TII do have an app where they actually record mammals, and the only record I could find was there was another bridge, possibly about another 2 kilometers north, further north of the actual Green Bridge, and there was a fox fatality found beyond that bridge. So in the 1 kilometer either side of our Green Bridge, we haven't had mammal fatality as far as I know, but I haven't looked into it in great detail.
Okay. Jean Hamilton has asked, what was the cost of the Green Bridge, and do you know if the construction cost was a lot more than the agricultural overpass would have cost without this mitigation?
As far as I know, I think what Galway County Council said it cost €1 million. But what was the breakdown element between how much less would have cost if it was just pure agricultural overpass? But one of the things, the advantages that one of the positive elements of the Green Bridge that Galway County Council has seen, not just the fact that it's a mammal overpass or a bat overpass, is that they do get a lot of calls from the general public talking about the Green Bridge and saying that it is a lovely soft element in the landscape, and it's so much nicer to look at than the other concrete structures that don't have this green element to it. So they have actually found that this is a very positive element as a general landscape feature on motorways.
That's really good to hear, actually. And was this, because would this have been just Galway County Council that would have instigated putting this into place? Was it because it's associated with the protected site, or? Well,
it was because it was an on-board finola. They literally put a series of mitigation, attached a series of mitigation measures to it. So it would have been suggested, but it was the actual requirements as a result of the on-board finola that actually stated these things need to be put in place.
To put them in. Okay. Yeah, it's still good that they got a positive response from it. Yeah, and Jean.
Yeah. It makes them encouraging, because it's like with these big structures, they can be white elephants. And if they're not properly designed and people see it as a waste of money, it doesn't help conservation at all. While this is generally being creating a nice positive element, even if it is just a soft landscape structure that people appreciate, that goes towards help conservation.
We have a question from Matthew who asked, were there any impacts from lighting?
In vicinity of the Green Bridge, there is no lighting in this area at all. This is a very rural area. It's a cul-de-sac on the Kiltartan side, and there's just Cool Park on the other side, but only pedestrian access. So there is no lighting at all. The next set of lighting would be just Gort, which is about 5 kilometers south of the Green Bridge.
So that's, on motorways, it's only lit up around the exits, isn't it? So that's
it's around the actual roundabouts and so forth, yeah.
Okay, so it wouldn't have been lit up anyway. And Malcolm asked, what is the landscape on the bridge deck? Are there hedges or trees planted across the bridge?
So it's so the actual construction of the Green Bridge has literally, there's almost like I suppose a deep embankment of soil, and then there is hedgerow whips across, planted across it. There was some trees across, but with the drought in 2018, they didn't survive. So it's literally just a hedgerow whips are actually growing on it. And each winter I go out and actually kind of address where some of these have died and ask that they're actually replaced with more planting to ensure that there is continuous planting and management going on. So it is just a hedgerow on the actual dome with the green bridge, and then the connecting landscape is a hedgerow, primarily hawthorn and blackthorn, with individual trees such as rowan and oak planted at different levels along the actual landscaping. So just hedgerow on the dome, and then the rest is tree lines and hedgerows.
Okay. And in regards to that sort of ongoing monitoring, Tina, was that part of the contract, or is it, do you just go out and have a look and see?
No, this is part of the contract. This is Galway County Council wanted to make sure that it's actually working. Okay. So it's a 3-year contract to monitor it. We missed 2020, so we'll fill that in with 2021.
Okay, perfect. That's brilliant. So I've run out of questions in the chat. If anybody has anything they want to ask Tina before we finish up, you can pop it up there. Tina, you informed me that your favourite bat was the brown long-eared bat. Do you want to tell us why?
What? Oh, they're just terribly cute.
Just emotionally.
No, I think that just because as anybody said, ask me, am I a bat expert? I go, no, because I learn something new every time I go surveying bats. And I do find brown long-eared bats in particular like to observe bat surveyors. I'm sure they're kind of like learning what's going on with these guys. And I just find they're terribly inquisitive, observing animal. And I just think that as a consequence, it makes them very interesting and lots to learn from these guys.
Very good, very good. Okay, well, that's all the questions that have come in for you, Tina. Thank you so much. It was such an interesting talk, and some good questions come in there as well. So I think we'll finish up with that and say thanks to everybody for joining us, and thanks to you for coming on and talking with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks very much, Tina.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody, for coming.
Thanks.